The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
They may be drinkers, Robin, but they're also human beings.
Hell yeah, let's get Stinko.
This is the Giles and the Goalie podcast as part of the Zone Coverage Podcast Network. With your hosts, Giles Farrell and Ben Remington.
Welcome to a very special edition of the Giles and the Goalie podcast. I am your host, Giles Farrell. Across from me is Ben Remington.
Hello.
And sorry, to clarify, we are still practicing social distancing. So when I say across from me, I mean across the computer screen.
Yeah, across both 35s. Well, actually, no, just one. Sorry.
Yeah, we're just separated by 135, not two. Although it's close. Yeah. Actually, it is both.
Close.
It is both.
Yeah.
I have to go over both when I go to your house.
Yeah, true. But you're technically on the west side of 35E, so
true. But anyway,
but yeah, you do have to cross both once you get to the split. Sure.
We picked the best time for the most useless banter.
Yes, we do.
Yes, this is a very special edition of the Giles and the Goalie podcast. We have a guest joining us today that we have openly pined for to be on this podcast for pretty much since the day he was hired by the Minnesota Wild. Yeah. And since he has left the Minnesota Wild, we were able to back channel a way to get through to him. So he is now going to join us here in the next couple minutes to chat hockey, and that is the former coach of the Washington Capitals, Anaheim Ducks, and most recently the Minnesota Wild. He is the one and only Bruce Boudreau. And shout out to the great Michael Russo, who was our liaison essentially in making this happen, getting Bruce and myself connected to set up a time to sit down and chat. So a most hearty thank you to him for making that happen. Certainly did not have to, but he certainly made the week shine a little bit brighter coming out of one, for me personally, that wasn't overly great considering the events that I had to can over the last weekend.
Right.
Yeah, we could not be more thrilled to have Bruce join us. We talk mainly hockey for the most part. We didn't really dive into too much Wild-related stuff, just because we just kind of wanted to pick Bruce's brain on some other general hockey stuff. So we came up with some good questions for him. Just kind of centered around the NHL in general, and of course our own tailor-made questions that we have to ask to all of our guests that come at the very end of the sit-down with Bruce. But yeah, any thoughts before we go into Bruce?
No. Just a bit of a fair warning. His phone does get a little bit choppy there, a little bit towards the end, but you can still understand him, I think, for the most part. So hopefully it isn't too tough to listen to. We could still kind of understand what he was saying, even if you missed a word or two. But just a little bit of a warning on that.
Yeah, no doubt.
Just would not be us without audio quality issues, even when we have Bruce Boudreau on.
Yeah, even when we were doing test runs earlier today, just to make sure we didn't run into these snafus. It's something out of our control, but oh well. We still,
it wasn't our fault.
Yeah, we still had a blast, so we will let you hear from the man himself, Bruce Boudreau, and we will have some thoughts on the other side of his chat with us.
Hi, this is Bruce Boudreau. I don't see how in Toronto that they're calling it, unless it's a guy they just pulled in off the street that hasn't seen hockey before. If I were the fans, I'd be booing even more, because that, they pay good money for this.
If you want it, don't just think you want it. Go out and f***ing want it.
All right, we are now joined by the man himself. Bruce Boudreau joins the Giles and the Goalie podcast hotline. Bruce, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. And how are you surviving the self-isolation these days?
Well, you know what? It's I'm no different than anybody else. I'm probably more bored than as other people are than they're used to being bored. But I got to believe people like in Florida and stuff at least are enjoying the weather more.
We've had some bipolar kind of weather here in the Twin Cities the last week. 1 minute you look out the window, it's perfectly sunny, almost not a cloud in the sky, and then 3 minutes later you look out the same window and it's snowing again. So that hasn't helped our cause.
Blizzard.
Yeah.
It was a blizzard, and I don't know how it is in Egan. But one of the things on the weekend, I think, was it Sunday that it snowed all day?
Yeah.
There's snow everywhere. You're getting 10 inches of snow, but the roads were perfectly clear. I don't know who was figuring this all out, but I mean, it seems like it was, okay, we're going to let you drive, but we're just not going to let you have fun.
I think the weather is just as confused with what's going on as we are.
No doubt.
Yeah. What's the hardest part for you staying isolated right now, Bruce?
I think the hardest part is not having any hockey to talk about or to watch or to work. Those are the things. I mean, today is almost the 2-month anniversary of when I was let go, and I've never been without hockey for anywhere near that long. So it's that's the most difficult part, I think. Other than that, it's just the natural boredom of staying indoors, because you're not used to staying indoors. At least when you're working, you're going to work every day and you come back, and then that's a different thing. Or if it's nice out in the summer, or it's you can go out, and whether it's just go for walks or golf or do whatever, but you're sort of trapped inside right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned, there's no hockey. We've been one long month since hockey last had an actual game played. Before all the leagues went on to a pause, were you, I guess the first question is, were you still keeping up with the league, or were you still kind of in a decompressing mode? And if you were, was there any team or two you might have had your eye on for a long Stanley Cup run? Had that gone on?
Well, you know what's funny about that is now I watch hockey every night in the winter, every night. But I found when I got let go that I was watching more hockey, and because I was staying up for the West Coast games, and what you find yourself doing, I guess, if you've been a coach for a long time, is you really start paying attention to the players, the teams, the systems, because we're always looking for new jobs, right? So it's you want to be educated, and hopefully, if you ever get a chance to talk to somebody, that you can talk about their team with some intelligence. Mm-hmm. So I was watching more, to be quite honest. Sure.
Yeah, and you had done a little bit of work for Sportsnet at the trade deadline there. Was there any plans for you to do any TV coverage during the playoffs as well?
Well, we had talked about it with Sportsnet and NBC, quite frankly, and Sportsnet had said I was probably going to work with them for a couple rounds at least. We hadn't gotten back to, or NBC hadn't gotten back to us on anything concrete at all. But I was certainly hoping to work during the playoffs doing something. and worst case scenario is at least maybe go watch some sort of hockey somewhere, because I've found it's important to keep visible and to keep your name out there when you don't have a job.
Yeah, and what did you think of the whole TV analyst experience when you did the trade deadline show? Because I know there's certainly people around these parts, at least. I know that once you decide to move on from coaching, that they'd love to see you do that in some kind of capacity.
Well, I thought it was real fun. I've done it before. I mean, when I first went to Anaheim, they weren't making the playoffs when I went there in dead last place. So CBC asked me to come and do a couple playoff rounds, and I did, and I really enjoyed it doing it. You don't like to do it too often. That means you're not working. You're not in the playoffs. But I really like that part of the work. I start talking, and it flows pretty freely for me. So it's I just find myself, I got to watch out that I don't get in trouble saying things or opening my mouth, as watching your highlights on me, that you can sometimes read my lips on what I'm saying.
Yeah, we definitely want to give you a hearty thank you for being as candid as you were as the head coach of the Minnesota Wild. It certainly was very entertaining, not just with the gifts that Giles made, but your post-game presser quotes and that kind of stuff. We really can't thank you enough for that. Do you have anything that you attribute that to? What do you think? What do you think makes you so quotable and so gifable?
Well, I just think I have a hard time when somebody's asking me a question, not telling them the truth back. For the press conferences, I really have to fight it to sort of temper it. We're not saying sometimes what you really want to say, because I always think people that are asking me questions aren't stupid. Half the time they know the answers, or they think they know the answers, and then all of a sudden, if you come off base and don't say the right, you go way off base on the answer, they look at you and you go, yeah, you're just full of crap and you're not telling the truth. As far as behind the bench, I've really had to temper it emotionally. And, it's funny, like when you see those things that I say, and, the refs sort of piss you off a lot during the course of the game. And it's hard not to get mad at them. It really is. So, I mean, but at the same time, what their job is. And where I was a little bit crass more in the beginning, I thought in the last 2 or 3 years at least, that I was I got to know all the refs a lot better, and with the ones I knew, I was a little better with it, or handled it a little better. But sometimes, and they all make mistakes and everything, and I make mistakes, and like when I make mistakes and I scream at them, and then I go and watch the video and realize I've made a mistake, I find a way to get to them and tell them I'm sorry. But there's some mistakes that cost you games, and they have no accountability, and that's the ones that really sort of piss me off.
Right. Well, why do you think that it's so rare amongst NHL coaches to be like that, to be as candid as you were?
I don't know. Everybody's got their own personality. This is mine. I mean, I can't change it. John Tortorella's got his. Don Cherry has his. I mean, other guys are Ken Hitchcock. All of these guys have their own distinct personalities, and I think that's that's what it is. I don't want to be anybody that I'm not, and I think as a coach, I'm the same way to the players. Sometimes you have to really refrain from saying 100% the truth, because we know things that they don't. But at the same time, you want to be as honest as you can to them all the time.
Right.
So you mentioned kind of some of your tirades. Is there an instance that instantly comes in your mind where you go, okay, maybe I went too far?
Yeah, I mean, there are. I can't say it here, but I mean, there are times when you just explode, and the thing is that they can, like anybody else. It usually happens when referees go to the other side of the ice when you're trying to talk to them. And because now you're starting to yell, and you know they can't hear you through the crowd, so you're yelling louder. And all that does is get you madder and madder and madder. And then there's times when they say they're going to run you, and they've got the last word. They're the policeman, and you got to shut up, but you don't want to, you know?
Mm-hmm. So
yeah,
if you so basically right now, you know, we're talking about having games possibly being played in empty arenas. So you definitely would be able to get your message across then if that were the case.
Oh, yeah, you would be able to, unfortunately, hear me, and I think it's going to happen too. I mean, if they do start playing, I mean, and TV's going to be there, they'll have all the microphones still set up as everything else. I think you'll be able to hear a little bit more than normal of what A, players are saying, or B, referees are saying, or our coaches are saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so switching gears just a little bit, kind of the local angle here. You spent a season here playing for the Fighting Saints in St. Paul. What was that like playing in the WHA? Was there an underdog mentality considering the North Stars were just across the river?
You know what? I don't think so. We thought it was maybe an entitlement thing. I mean, we had some stars on our team that all played in the NHL. You have Davey Keon, Michael Walton, Johnny McKenzie. All of these guys were all NHL players, and it was more of an entitlement, we thought. Because they were good players, they didn't think they were any lesser than the NHL guys. But for the most part, it was a fun-time league. Didn't take it as serious. We took it as serious, but not as serious. That makes any sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When you were first hired here, what was maybe the biggest difference from St. Paul that you had remembered from those WHA days?
Well, there was no glass boards.
Right.
The arena was beautiful. It had grown up as a city from what I could see. I mean, I was only there from October through January, but that's when the team folded, was in January. So I mean, but I wasn't the kind of guy that would go out and want to learn the city and that. I pretty well. It's the same way after 4 years. I know Woodbury, but that's all I really know. Woodbury and to the rink in St. Paul. But so I sort of stayed to myself a little bit more, and it was the first time actually leaving home. So it wasn't like I should have been, hey, I want to explore this new part of the world, but I didn't. I was more just to myself.
Yeah. So were you at the airport then when they decided to not? I think it was a trip to Cincinnati, I believe that. That
was our last game.
Yeah.
We knew it was our last game. We knew before the game that we were folding. A funny story goes actually is we were sitting around and one of the players said, "You know what? It's our last game here. I don't want to go out for the warm up." And we all looked at each other and said, "What are you talking about?" Let's just not go out for the warm-up. And so we didn't go out for the warm-up, and the referee and chief came in and wondered what was going on, and we just said, we just don't feel like going out for the warm-up. And we were down 2-0 at about the 2-minute mark of the first period. But I think if I recall correctly, we won the game 7-6.
Oh, wow. Ooh. Okay. So just kind of switching gears again, later on, your head coaching gig with Washington, you coached Alex Ovechkin there, and he's had a fair share of naysayers, and a lot of folks talk about him not being able to win the big one and all that. What was it like for you coaching that kind of player, that caliber of player, and where do you think he belongs in hockey's history, in the pantheon of hockey?
Well, he's right up at the top as far as I can see. I mean, you have better playmakers, in the Gretzkys and of the world. And I mean, I just finished watching a 2-hour video on Bobby Orr and the different times in the world. And Gordie Howe was different as well. But, I mean, I was lucky enough to coach Alex when he scored 65 goals and was the MVP of the league the one year. And, he just, those guys, they want it. They want the pressure on them. They want to be the guy. And Alex was no different. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's like a lot of players in a lot of sports that are superstars. Not a lot of them are very good defensively at the beginning. You got to sort of learn that. It's just about scoring. And Alex wasn't very good defensively the first couple of years. I had him when he was 21, 22, and 23, and I think 20. But, when he got to be 29 and 30, he was learning a little bit more about that aspect. But tremendous guy, liked him a lot, loved his the ability that he had to be confident in himself and in the game. And he was an exceptional player. And, I don't know how many of these, if there was never a lockout, he probably, or a stoppage, good chance he'd beat Gretzky's record. Now it's touch and go.
Yeah. What? I'm assuming you were probably pretty happy for him when he finally won the cup.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, really happy for him, but not only him. Nick Backstrom was there. Really happy for him. John Carlson, Braden Holtby. Those guys were still all guys that I had coached, and it was, Orlov. I think there was 7 of them or 8 of them still on the team. And I was, lucky that, I mean, George McPhee did a tremendous job in those days of getting these guys, and they were all 21 and 22 years old, and it was more of a fun bunch than it was a serious bunch. And now they grew up and they went through a lot of times where they didn't win, and people were holding them, saying they could never win the big one, blah blah blah. So I think it was great to see them win, just to see the pleasure on their face watching the games, and that they finally did it. And it was great for the Washington fans who put up with an awful lot for 20 years.
Right.
Yeah, and ironically, they win the cup against the other team George McPhee built, the Golden Knights, who in their first year.
Yeah, that was. I was talking to George during that final, and it was tough. Like, I mean, George was there for an awful long time, and he still had a house in D.C. So he wasn't torn. I'm sure he wanted to beat them pretty bad.
Yeah, that's kind of an underrated fan base in the NHL, Washington. I went there 5 years ago to see a game there, and just a great group of fans.
Oh, they were so loud. My first couple of years there, especially I think my first year, I remember telling the guys in between periods of one of the playoff games and saying, listen, I can't hear you guys. You can't hear me. I'm going to hit you really hard on the shoulders to see if you're up. And it was true. I couldn't hear 5 feet in front of me. It was so loud. It was as loud a building, and still is, as loud a building as I've ever been in. Passionate fans. I mean, you've got other fan bases that are just loud all the time, like Vegas. But I think the Washington fans were as loud as anybody. They were just starting this rock in the red thing, and it was quite enjoyable.
What what is your take on Vegas? They've certainly went above and beyond as far as anyone's expectations, but somebody told you 10 years ago that Vegas was going to have a hockey team and was going to be successful like this. What would you have said to that?
I would have been hard-pressed to agree, but the proof is in the pudding. I mean, I know the person that's in charge of marketing there and everything else, and how good a job they've done. and with George, how good a job he's done. And they had a long time to him and Kelly McCrimmon to pick a team, and they've seen an awful lot of games, so they knew exactly who they were getting. They really did a great job in of actual, like, I don't know what the right word is, but they would say, okay, we'll let you hold on to that guy that you have to go, but you have to give us this draft choice or that player. And they did a great job at that. And I think Seattle is looking at it, but it's also made the rest of the league smarter in what they're going to give away the next time around.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you, at least from what I noticed with your time with the Wild, it was a little hard for me to keep tabs in Anaheim with the West Coast games, but you love to kind of jumble the lines when appropriate, and play some matchups and whatnot. What player, even line, if you have one that comes to mind in your time as a head coach, sticks out to you as the hardest to try and match up against?
Oh, I mean, in Washington, when you're playing against them, it's really hard to match up against the Ovechkin line, only because they got two lines like that. One line, you can, if you have a lot of confidence in your checking guys, you can match up pretty well. The other thing too is if you have the hammer, if you have the better group, I mean, it's easy. You just keep putting them out and force them to match up against you. But if you have to match up against a team that plays their number one line 21 minutes, it's difficult because you're usually your best defensive players or your best checkers are not your guys that are going to play the most ice time. In Minnesota, my first year was easy. Mikko, we had Mikko, Zucker, and Granlund, and they were all plus 30, and we would put them against anybody, and they would either hold them off the score sheet, but they could also score. So it was a lot easier. This year, it even was pretty good too, because once we got Eriksson X line was a perfect energy checking line, and they knew their roles, and it was easy for them to go up, but they knew they were only going to play 14, 15 minutes. So what gets tough is when the other teams have two really good lines, and some of the best teams in the league have three really good lines. But when you're matching up against Pittsburgh, say, and they've got Crosby coming out and then Malkin's line coming out, it's pretty hard. They're going to get probably the better matchup unless you've got a really good team.
Yeah. So just kind of looking back at, reflective on your whole career, especially as a head coach, you're up there as far as winning percentage in NHL history, and you've had your fair share of success. What do you think, or what do you want your legacy to be in the NHL?
Well, geez, I haven't even thought about it, what my legacy or anything would be. I would, would be a guy that was involved in hockey for his whole life. And right now it's 45 years. I'd like to be involved for 50 years. I think that would be a pretty good career from player to coach. And, in the end, all you want to do is win a Stanley Cup. I mean, I've found myself during this lockout watching way too many YouTube clips of teams winning Stanley Cups, and it just builds your hunger up more to want to do it. Everything has to go right. I thought I had great opportunities to do it in Washington and Anaheim. We lost in 7 games 3 times to the team that won a cup. And we felt that if we had won that game, 2008 against Pittsburgh, I think then we lost to Chicago in the conference finals in 7 games, and to LA the next year in 7 games. And I think if we had won any one of those games, that we would have had a really better than average chance of winning the cup. But so that's still the dream, no matter how old or how employed I am, is to be a member of a team that won the Stanley Cup.
Absolutely.
So that's something to ask on that. You mentioned losing to a team that goes on to win the cup. This is an argument my mom and I have had, forever, when it comes to teams that I have, cheered for in the playoffs, and then they lose, and then the team that beats you goes on to win. I don't take a whole lot of comfort in that, but my mom goes, "Oh, it's okay. They went on to win, so you got to feel better about it." Does that apply to you, or does that just make you, go maybe a little bit more nuts?
I don't feel any better. I feel shittier, actually, because you would have had the chance to win it. But it's just when it's over, it's a fact. That's what it is. You don't think about it at the time. You're depressed. You don't like to lose. But over time, when I sit back there now and look at we had 3-2 lead in games, Chicago in the conference final, and the 2 games we'd lost both of them in overtime. And that was the same thing with Washington. Is in against Pittsburgh, we won the first 2 games. We lost the next game in overtime. We lost Game 4 with an empty net. We lost Game 5 in overtime. We won Game 6 and lost Game 7. So these things, we're thinking that when you're sitting at home and you don't have much to do, you think about them and you reflect. And if this had to happen and that had to happen, but that's sports. I watch it every day and watch how you miss a goal at one end and you go down the other end and you score. And that's what makes sports so great to watch and to participate and be part of.
Yeah, agreed.
A couple more questions here for you, Bruce, before we can let you go. And these are questions we ask to all our guests that join our podcast here. The first of which is, Ben and I, like yourself, we're big hockey fans. We oftentimes we can't get enough of it, and probably the biggest passion that we have for hockey comes in the form of jerseys. So we have to ask if you have a particular jersey or jerseys from all time that you are particularly fond of.
You mean design or one that I've worn?
It can be any, like just ones that you've seen, or even ones that you've worn.
Well, the 2 jerseys I've got hung up right now in my house are a Blackhawk and a Leaf jersey, because I played for both those teams. But I like the designs, the brightness of every original 6 team. Quite frankly, the Boston gold, the Montreal red, the Detroit red, all of those things. The Rangers, even, which is not as much probably the Rangers, but the other teams all love them. I got 100 jerseys here. So it's I've got a lot of them, and gotten a lot of them from players that I've coached. That whether it's an Ovechkin or a Gretzky jersey or a Fedorov jersey, I hold pretty close to high esteem, because I really loved watching him play and loved the ability to coach him. I thought he was a great human being, so it was all good.
Cool.
And then the last one we asked, Bruce, this is a little off the wall that Ben and I don't argue a lot on this podcast, but this is the one where we do get into a pretty heated debate. And it comes in the form of a food question, and we have to ask, can you just eat soup as a meal?
You guys get it. Of all the stuff you talk about, and this is what you find you get in a fight about?
You'd be surprised.
Well, I don't think, I would answer it one way. Tomato soup is great. My favorite probably, but it's not a meal. Chunky chicken soup, that might be a meal. But very rarely, unless it's been through this pause, because when we're in the house here all the time, you try not to eat too heavy. I'll have soup as a meal, but usually it's an appetizer.
It's a good diplomatic answer, Bruce. Thank you.
I tried.
Ben, did you have any last questions for Bruce before we let him go?
No, we covered everything. Just thank you so much, Bruce. Thank you for coming on. This has been absolutely amazing, and we've been a huge fan of yours before you even landed here as the head coach, and we can't tell you how excited we were when you came here, and how much fun we had covering you, covering the team that you coached for the last couple of years here. Just a tremendous thank you for coming on the show and for being such a great personality to cover.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. I told Craig when I took the job, and I think that all I wanted to do was bring a Stanley Cup here. I wish I had been able to do that. I thought it would have been pretty fabulous to have the Stanley Cup in Minnesota. I think the people around town would have gone nuts, and it would. I visioned that an awful lot, but it just never took place. But it's been a lot of fun being here. The people have been great, and I appreciate you giving me a call.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bruce, and whatever comes next for you, we wish you the absolute best of luck.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Yep. Thanks, Bruce.
Okay.
Well, that was Bruce Boudreau. We are still kind of decompressing. We're trying to wrap our head around the fact that we talked to him for a half hour. I kind of speechless. That something we've openly wanted on our podcast for all these years, doing the Bruce Boudreau quote of the week segment. Among all the gifts I made that he referenced, I can't believe that actually happened.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously there was, we didn't expect a letdown at all, but man, did he live up to the hype. Like, just such a genuine guy, such an affable guy, just, he's so upfront with everything about him, and he doesn't mince words. And, he just gave such great, honest answers to everything that we asked. And I really did enjoy how much shit he gave us for the soup question, too. He's gonna know us as the soup guys now.
Yeah, if we ever cross paths with him again, and we try to reference this, hey, we're that podcast that at the very end asked you about soup.
He's not gonna remember any other question.
Nope.
Because it's all stuff he's answered before.
Right. Yeah. He goes, "Oh, you guys, okay, yeah."
Yeah.
But yeah, that was
huge thanks to him. I mean, just awesome. Like, that was just, just a really, really cool experience, and we could not be grateful enough to him and, as you mentioned, Russo, both for setting this up, because what an absolute adrenaline rush for hockey fans like me and Giles. My word.
Yeah, I don't really know what to say anymore.
I don't either. I think the interview speaks for itself, and I don't think there's a lot to take away from it, like interesting, news breaking type stuff. But that also isn't what we were going for, and it was just really cool to hear, him talk about all the time that he spent in hockey, and him talk about all the time that he spent in Minnesota, and what he thought about it, what it meant to him, and Washington as well when you asked. And it was just really cool to hear that kind of stuff. It was just really really nice to get some honest reflection from such a great character.
Yeah, and as we said, and I think he said that at one point when I think it was when we were talking about the referee kind of tiptoed around an answer. But yeah, he is a guy who still does want to coach again, so he does have to choose some words carefully. So.
Sure.
That does factor in when he has to answer a question, and we certainly do hope that he does come back and is a head coach in the NHL, next season, whenever that is, and we will obviously follow him from afar when that does happen, and I might just tune into their games just so I can continue on the Bruce Boudreau gift library.
You really should. That would be fantastic.
I didn't tell him, this is probably my one regret, is I didn't tell him that my favorite gif of him out of all the ones that I've done was 2 years ago around Christmas time. I think it was a game in Chicago at the United Center, and there was some egregious call that went against the Wild right before the commercial break. So the camera pans to Bruce, and as the screen has a pop-up saying "Happy Holidays," you see Bruce let out a expletive clear as day, if you can, as he said, read lips. And it's that, Happy Holidays, and then fades to black.
Just a nuclear F-bomb, too.
Yep, that's beautiful.
Another regret, Giles. You did not invite him to be the wedding officiant for your now rescheduled wedding.
I knew I forgot something on my list.
You had to strike while the iron was hot, Giles.
Yeah, you've put so much work into being the wedding officiant. I mean, you've got a parking pass, for crying out loud. I don't want to take that away from you now.
True. But you could have at least invited him to the wedding for some free food and drink.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I still can. I can maybe reach back out and see, but
shoot him a text. See what he's doing.
We might have scared him off with the soup question. That might have done it.
That's true. He's gonna expect to go to the wedding and it's just bowls of soup everywhere.
Bruce, soup is in the form of alcohol today. So that was the podcast. As you said, thank you to Bruce for taking some time. Although when he first got on the call with us before we hit record, he said it was absolutely no problem to jump on and talk because he said not like he's doing anything better right now. We're all in the same boat. We're all just sitting in our homes waiting for some good news. So,
right.
And again, thanks to Michael Russo of The Athletic, who also had a podcast earlier in the week with Bruce that was really fun. And you know what? I do have one more regret that I didn't ask Bruce. I forgot to jot this down. I had thought about it when I was working earlier today, but I forgot to write it down. And of course, it came back to bite me. I wanted his Batman movie take. We should have asked.
God, that would have been great. Damn it. Well, I mean, we the one non-hockey question we asked him really kind of threw him a curveball, so maybe it was better that we didn't ask more.
It was probably good. But he is a movie buff, so hopefully I don't doubt that he's seen the Batman movies.
I would think so, yeah.
So, yeah. I guess if we ever cross paths again, we can hash that out. But
you gotta leave him wanting more.
Right. We gotta save some in case there is a next time.
Right.
So, that will do it for us. Thank you for everyone for listening. If you are new to the show and you do like what you listen to from Ben and myself, feel free to smash that subscribe button because we still are going every week on this podcast. We're coming up with different topics and lists to talk about, and we're probably going to try to make a second podcast a week now with a guest like Bruce. We do have some other folks who have expressed an interest in joining our otherwise fine production. So we might even add just another special show a week just to kill some time because honestly, despite the fact I still, work a limited number of hours, then, I have so many more hours in the week that we need to kill. So you might as well.
Right. And I'm working no hours, so.
Yeah. Which sucks, but.
Yeah, I'll be fine.
I mean, Frank probably helps pass the time.
He does that. That's for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, that can do it for us on that rosy note. You can follow Ben and I on Twitter at Ben Remington, at Giles Farrell. Our podcast has a Twitter at GATG Wild Podcast. We're also on Facebook, facebook.com/GATG Wild Podcast. You can hear us on iTunes, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts, we're going to be there. And we also contribute to a website called Zone Coverage. You can go to zonecoverage.com/wild. All the podcasts we've recorded are also there, as well as the written content that we've come up with. So do give that a look as well. So that will do it for Ben and myself. Again, thanks to Bruce Boudreau for joining us here today. And we will chat with you again next week.
Later.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Gill and the Goaltender podcast.
That's not resiliency. You're making it sound like we're good. That's all. I'm done.